Firstly to Peter and his team and to Steve for his chairmanship of the Pulse committee inside GIWA of giving this a really good shot and bringing us together today. I really feel that this is the start of something significant and it's been a long time coming. Secondly, I want to apologise to the R&D people that are in this room, because my belief is that all the work's been done. And if you stopped all the research and development money and redirected it into lupins for human food for 1 year, we would find the tipping point of lupins for a quality human food to a global market. So don't throw your pies at me yet. Thirdly, my wish would be for a room full of investors with lazy capital looking for a highly profitable future market in the short term. And I'm sure there are a few in this room that just don't quite know whether it's time to jump into the lupins for human food market. So my job today is to convince you that the time is right and the lights are green. I'm going to show you my first slide in a minute. And what it reflects is in all my global travels, the one thing that resonates to me when I talk to anyone about Australian sweet lupin as a human food is that, quote unquote, "This is amazing, how come I haven't heard about it?" And away I go, I take a deep breath and I explain to them why that is so. Sometimes I feel a little bit like Professor Julius Sumner Miller. Why is it so? Because he told the story time and time again, and it's the critical mass, I suppose, or the critical inertia that we're just about to hit that will change that whole paradigm about how come I haven't heard about this. And then lastly, this first slide by way of introduction. It's the thing that gets me out of bed very early most mornings when Professor Peter Leedman, who heads up what used to be called it's now called the Perkins Institute, which is all about cancer research and a whole bunch of other stuff. And he said to me one day, in his role as the head of the Centre for Food and Genomic Medicine, which was back in quite some years ago, a very important piece of work was done. He said, "David, one day lupins will be prescribed as a medicine." So that's pretty powerful. My time goes back to, I grew up in a family community farming around Mullawa, and our primary focus was to grow lupins mainly because of sheep productivity. It was less about soil productivity and carbon capture and so on. We knew that it did a whole bunch of good things for the soil, but it was all about, we knew that when we were running a lot of breeding ewes, we knew that our twinning rates would increase by 40%, and we knew that we could double the sperm content of rams by feeding them lupins within about 10 days pre-joining. So you would think forward now and you could say, well, that's got to have some positive influence over some of the challenges that we've got to do with infertility of our young globally, but I'm not here to talk about conjoining adults. I'm here to talk about our story. So we started this story with a group of friends in 2016 because this group of friends were damn passionate about lupins as a human food. We knew that it had significant health benefits. We knew that we were on the cusp of a major shift in plant-based protein. We knew that we had the capacity within experience and wherewithal to be able to lead the change to try to find that tipping point of lupin as a human food. We've won a whole heap of awards globally with lupin, but that doesn't get you onto the table because people just don't know about it. Plant-based protein is on a huge roll. It's gaining enormous momentum, and it's largely driven by some of the health benefits. When we went to market, we thought, well, how do we demonstrate where these health benefits can be best leveraged, can best taken advantage of? So we brought out a whole range of products about people, how do I cook with lupins, you know, particularly when people didn't have a strong background in the use of pulses. So we brought out a range of foods, and we also made a lupin flake and a lupin flour and so on. And then since then we've developed a whole range of applications, some of which we'll bring to market this year, with the strategic intent to get closer and closer to the human mouth, basically. So on the right-hand side, you can see in the middle there, lupin milk. Well, Department of Agriculture did that work on lupin milk. It must be 20 years ago. It might even be 30 years ago. Lupin pasta, again, similarly. And I could go on about the use of it as an egg white replacer, yogurt, and so on. And I'm going to talk about a German company called ProLupin that actually picked up a lot of that technology, and they've commercialised that. So where did we go wrong? So you'll know that, and John has talked about it, Sadiq has talked about it, and others in different circles have talked about the comparison of lupins to other pulses in an agronomic sense, whereas my focus is about, and you can see, if I can get this little thing to work, you can see here the little squiggly lines, so we can see here fibre. The little yellow lines we can see as carbohydrate, and the blue lines are protein. Nothing comes close. Lupin has the greatest combination of dietary fibre and protein of any pulse globally. When you add in 4% digestible or net carbohydrate in a world that is rife with type 2 diabetes and obesity, it is just about a superfood. I hate the term. Is it a wonder food? Getting better? I'm not too sure how you describe it. But if Peter Liedman says to me, David, one day this will be prescribed as a medicine, perhaps it's a lifesaver. So it sits somewhere in between healthy and indulgence. The jigsaw puzzle, 5-star health rating, what does that really mean? The jigsaw puzzle is that it delivers in so many areas of human health when currently we are challenged by more and more sophisticated foods that we really don't know much about their origins. We did a whole heap of work around hydrolyzed protein isolates and also protein concentrates, and protein isolates require a fair bit of pH shifting to be able to get the product to stratify, to be able to decant, to be able to then concentrate the product into a 95-96% protein substrate for the use in a range of foods. Does it have a place in the future? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. What we're finding is that the conscious consumer is looking at this matrix to understand, well, where does my food come from and how does it deliver value in that crossword puzzle? In terms of sustainability, I wrote a blog on our website, and it was about sustainability, and one of the slides from one of the previous speakers came up about water use efficiency. Just how much does lupin use to produce a kilo of protein? And it's a hands-down winner. And as a consequence, I think that alone will help drive its success in a future world. We try to benchmark what we do against the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 of them on the right-hand side there. We can't tick off on all of them, but lupin ticks off on a hell of a lot of them. So if there was a way where you could judge lupin as a human food against many other foods in the world, that's a really good backgrounder or a benchmark, if you like, to silhouette the qualities. I won't go into the details about where it delivers value because it's been talked about a lot previously. But what I can talk to you about is where is the development horizon? Let's just talk about price for a moment. And I would love to be up here in 27 years' time, just like John Orr, runs an amazing business, is a stalwart of this industry and really gets it, really understands where we're at. What we're talking about here is we're not talking about $350 to $400 a kilo or 45 cents a kilo. We're talking about, for example, something as simple as a little pack, and this is not an advertorial, so don't get me wrong, but I'll give you as an example. A 400 gram pack of Lupin Flake sold on our website, which is about 80% of our revenue in Australia for a whole bunch of reasons, sells for $7.20 for the pack. You do the numbers. $7.20 times or divided by 0.4 is around about $16 to $17 a kilo. That's $17,000 a tonne. We're not even talking here about Lupin Flake. We're talking, one of our competitors, for example, in the US sells a Lupin pasta at the equivalent rate of $32 US per kilo in a 285 gram pack and can't keep up with it. $32 a kilo US, if your maths is a little bit scratchy, is $32,000 per tonne US. So our whole strategic focus has to be to get closer and closer to the human mouth. We cannot stay in the realm of a commodity if we really want the change to happen. Sadiq and John and others have put up numbers, Kerry and Mary have put up numbers around production figures. For lupins to be able to get out of the volatility of demand and growers make choices better now than ever before because they've got so much science at their fingertips. It's all about net dollars in the bank per hectare sown, gross margin. We're talking here at $32,000 US per tonne rather, a significant uplift and a major game changer for the potential of lupins into the human food market and pre-farm gate values. Where does it actually fit? Bakery. 2 weeks ago I was in Melbourne at the bakery trade show, and on our website, if you Google Baker's Guide to Lupin Flour, up will come a little form, drop your name and detail in there, and then you'll find that an artisan baker has produced a very, very technical set of recipes for some amazing breads, up to around about 14% of Lupin flour, which can go to much higher than 35% Lupin flour into bread products. I'm not talking about just bread, but what I'm talking about is a group of bakers, for example, that should know Lupin flour, and they don't. So I come back to my point about what is the major thing that's going to bring about the tipping point, and it's about awareness. Market growth opportunities. This is a slide on the left-hand side which shows the level of investment in the growth of plant-based alternatives by category. On the right-hand side, you'll see V2 Foods part of it there, and this is a couple of years old. But V2 Foods are, for example, they own the rights to the Rebel Burger in Hungry Jack's. They are now invested heavily into plant-based proteins from faba beans into a protein isolate, doing a really, really good job. You've got Impossible Foods at the top, and I might be wrong here, I stand corrected, but I think they went to market seeking, on the US stock exchange, they were seeking, I think it was 150 to 200 million, and were oversubscribed to 1.3 billion. The issue with Impossible Foods and a number of others is that they use some products that the conscious consumer is particularly concerned about. So what that means is that they've had a major trajectory of rise in terms of market penetration, and they're now starting to flatten out, mainly driven by having to, I guess, reset what their products are. On one side, you've got products that are very sophisticated, got a lot of chemistry in there, and on the other side, you've got what is known as clean label, which is where our philosophy sits. It's about clean label that delivers a value to consumers, that ask the question, where does this stuff come from, and don't break out into a sweat. I Just want to give you a bit of an overview about where the market growth opportunity is. Now I'm going to flip through these slides fairly quickly, but if you go to the Plant-Based Foods Association website, this stuff sits in there. Another great website is the Good Food Institute, gfi.org. This shows that the total plant-based food market in the last 4 years has increased steadily, and this is about 12 months old now, 2021, to 7.4 billion. The number of people, so this is about trends, about who's eating what. Penetration of 62% of all North American households have tried some plant-based food with a repeat rate of 79%. We think a lot about the US market simply because it is leading the charge in terms of plant-based food consumptions. Plant-based meat sales have flattened out a little bit, mainly dominated because of the Impossible Foods market. They have a yeast inside their product which is genetically modified, which helps to improve the nya-nya, the taste, the chew, if you like, on their burger products. It's flattened out. I think they'll resolve it technically and they'll go on, but you can see here that plant-based meats have really changed significantly. Tyson's, for example, one of the world's largest red meat manufacturers, were a significant investor in Impossible Foods, and others have withdrawn and reinvested that back into their own hybrid products. So it's a meat plant-based protein hybrid, recognising that plant-based proteins have got a significant upside. Plant-based, in terms of dairy categories, you can see here the biggest one is creamer. The Department of Agriculture did this work many, many years ago. However, it's just now starting to take traction. And Ben's going to probably talk a little bit about the great work that they're doing. But you can see here that plant-based milks has increased significantly, whereas animal-based milks is really starting to take a hit. It's not hard. You can do it at home. If you've got a mixer and you've got a muslin cloth and you've got a little jar and you've got about 24 hours to allow it to separate, you can make your own. We do it all the time. So where's the missing link? Just want to talk about the global movements, and the Canadians were mentioned a little while ago. I don't know whether you can see that, but it says Lupin Platform Inc. Inc. So this is all about Lupinus angustifolius. It's about sweet lupin. The advantage that we've got over them is that we've nailed the alkaloid issue in many respects. Not all, but in many respects. They are struggling with it, but they will catch up, just the way that they did with the noodle market in Western Australia. They have invested tens of millions of dollars into the food end of the market, not so much R&D. The magic of sweet lupin, Canada's newest superfood. They are on a roll and they're not slowing down. In terms of total production, it's increasing by factors of 3 to 4 each year. Let's talk about the French market here. So they've got a product so this is actually, we can't compete in the European market for 2 reasons. Number one is we can't get product to the European market because of freight, as John mentioned. Freight into the US market for us, for example, a 40-foot container now is in the realm of 10 to 12,000 US. You can do the numbers on it. It means that you can't sell a basic product like flake or flour into the European market. The other advantage is that they are not constrained by the requirement to have alkaloid levels at less than 0.02%. So you would just about call it a non-trade tariff barrier. Whereas we are constrained by Food Standards Australia and New Zealand to be able to take lupins to market at less than 0.02, lupin products to market at less than 200 parts per million. So they've got Farrell Up 500 and a range of products there. Lupina USA. So this is a small offshoot of Irwin Valley Flour, really small operator, but quite a quality product into the US. Generally, it's showing out of stock. This is the product owned by ProLupin, which is this is the spin-off from the Fraunhofer Institute out of Germany. You know, they're into ice creams and they're into dairy products and drinks and so on. Quite small, really still really struggling, but just a really great product. Their branding is fantastic. So there is some really significant movement. What about Australian movement? Irwin Valley, hats off to these guys, the group of farmers that got behind it. Unfortunately, they were behind before their time. What about Robbie and Tanya Kitto from just near Geraldton? Doing a fantastic job. again with a flake lupin, just not quite cutting through, a little bit like us. Tim Corrick, Coastal Crunch, got a great range of granolas rather, onto the local market. I've even seen it at the Perth airport. Fantastic product. Lupins for Life, based out of New South Wales, using Albus lupins. They've got some alkaloid issues, but they're having a crack. And then you've got Eighth Day Foods, which is an emulsion of a tempeh fermented product, sort of not much on their website, but they seem to have won some awards for some plant-based foods. Really starting to get some momentum. And then there's us. Again, our products are nowhere near close enough to the human food market to be able to really leverage the value for us and for also the growers that we buy. So where is the missing link? Number one is I really believe that we need strategic relationships to be significantly different to what they are at the moment. We need something like Australian Sweet Lupin Inc. We've got 4 New World lupins, one of which is Albus, the other one is Metabolus, and then of course you've got Luteus, but then you've got Angustifolius. The global community doesn't know about that. They think lupin is lupin is lupin is lupin, and it is not. When we talk about the alkaloid levels, when we talk about the way that Australian farmers who lead the world in this space are doing such a good job of delivering across, in terms of sustainability, sustainable business practices, it just doesn't come close. The second thing we need is that we need really, really sophisticated food technology assets. Western Australia does not have strong food technology assets, full stop. The Peel precinct may go some way to that, but it doesn't go anywhere near far enough to be able to develop the foods that we need into the future. And at the moment, we're starting to branch out into pasta-type foods, which we'll launch fairly soon. So you've got a quick understanding of where we're going, and also in terms of fermented foods. Sophisticated fermented foods deliver amazing health benefits, but it needs strong food technology. We need appealing, ready-to-cook and ready-to-eat options. There's just not enough on the market at the moment. People say, I don't know how to cook with lupins. Let me take you by the hand. Open the packet, boil the water, boil it for 2.5 minutes, drain it, add your favourite sauce, open your mouth, put it in and go, this tastes great. It's as simple as that's where we've got to get to. We're not there, but if we get there, that's where the opportunity is. And I repeat it again, $32,000 US per tonne is where we've got to get to. The world has never heard about Australian sweet lupins. Again, I apologise to the research community in this space, but if I was God for a day, I would take your budget off you, I would put it all into marketing, and within 12 months we would see a massive shift in what we now see as the demand for Australian sweet lupin. And then finally, we need patient capital. In this room, as I said, I would love to have a room full of venture capitalists that really get this whole thing about plant-based protein. When I talk to venture capitalists, all of a sudden I'm led off into the heady virtues of the Australian Stock Exchange and to other whole bunch of things. Hang on a second, we haven't even got to these ready-to-eat foods that I've just been talking to. We haven't got to the sophisticated equipment that can enable us to take it to a global market. I was in Melbourne 2 weeks ago to the Bakers Trade Show. It's been 2.5 years since I've been to a global trade show with any sort of sophisticated product. It's impossible to tell people about it. I go back to what I said before, this is amazing, how come I haven't heard about it? The last 2.5 years have been a significant challenge, but the next 2.5 years are going to be enormously exciting.
A great presentation there, it's terrific, and you're right, there's a lot of growth for the food, lupins for food. Just out of interest, you had your top 5 points there, and you were mentioning the sophistication technology. What value is that? How much money will that cost? Can you tell me how much they're worth?
I'll take the high level, Mary.
Yeah.
I would say that there's probably, I'd say conservatively this year, there'll be somewhere between $25 and $30 million going into the R&D and E community for lupins this year. I'll take the lot. Oh. To be realistic about what's it going to take to get to really sophisticated equipment, I'd say it's in the realm of somewhere between $8 and $10 million. With that comes the very, very clever, internationally acclaimed human resources that can actually deliver this. We're nowhere near that. Oh, sorry, Mary, I'm talking common use facilities here.
Ian, great talk. I've always felt, and you started on what I felt was the key driver, and that is sex. And we know that it has a significant benefit in that area. We've done the work years and years ago, and it seems to me that that's a real marketing opportunity.
It's so true. And you know, and I've mentioned that, John, on numerous occasions, and I talk about increasing the sperm rate by a factor of 100%, doubling it, and increasing the twinning rate by 40%. And of course, all the young blokes wiggle in their chair, and the shoulders go back, and they stand up stronger. And all the girls go, oh my God, I don't really want twins or triplets. But you're right, it is a really good marketing opportunity, because it does get people to sit up and pay attention and go, wow, this is a really interesting product. If I talk to you know, the esteemed researchers from UWA that have done this work over the years, they say, it's just because it's a damn good food. Is it something special in it? I'm not too sure, but I know the work's been done, and it had a profound effect on our farming operation and our breeding ewes, as it has done throughout Western Australia and Australia probably over decades. But you're right, John, it does, it turns the corners of the mouth up when you do actually pitch it. So.
It's just a comment that, you know, I've read on Google recently that hummus is an aphrodisiac, so that might be a good marketing tool as well. So made from chickpeas.
Yeah, that's right. The difference is, of course, that lupin's got twice the protein and 8 times less carbohydrate, and similarly with dietary fibre. Chickpeas, everyone knows chickpeas, it makes a fantastic hummus. But I've trotted lupin flour and lupin flake around the world and had Lebanese, Israeli, Africans, Europeans and so make a hummus out of lupin, and they go, this is amazing, how come I haven't heard about it? And that's my byline.
Thank you, David.